Chosen by the Alien King. Alien Love Island, Season 1, Book 5. A sci-fi alien warrior romance by Lindsey R. Loucks. Copyright 2024 held by Lindsey R. Loucks. Narrated by Jenna Rose and B.J. Hunter. Produced and directed by CTR Audio. Chapter 1. Nira. I'd heard Max's question, but I'd just been through a major spaceship crash, and my brain was still rebooting. It was now loading the smell of a red number 7, a core process for sure, and was nowhere near answering important, life-altering questions yet.
Will you marry me?
Max, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Is this really the right time? He took a deep breath, his shimmery purple scales catching each halo the sunset cast on him, and looked into my eyes with a fierce determination that left me breathless.
If I waited for the right time, we'd both be dead.
He was right, of course. Our lives had been in a constant state of upheaval since we'd been kidnapped. Before that, even. Conflicting emotions stirred within me like a raging storm. Could I truly trust him? Put my faith in a fade after all I had lost at the hands of one? Could I let go of my past and trust this alien warrior king with my future? My heart ached with longing for the kind of love he offered. I wanted so desperately to believe in him, to let go of the past and embrace us. Throwing a furtive glance around, I found the entire cast and crew of Alien Love Island, plus my crew, and likely the billions of viewers watching live via the hovering camera drones, plus very hungry caterpillar number 1 in his jar, and Knacket with a striped sock around her head wound who'd slumped to the sand, all waiting for my answer with bated breath. Except Mike, my ex-husband, who must have made himself scarce in the dense jungle foliage. Mike, the cause of most of my problems. But he wasn't Max. As I stared into Max's eyes, I saw a reflection of the pain we both carried, the losses we'd suffered. With him by my side, the soul-crushing weight was bearable. I clutched Max's hand tighter, feeling the smooth texture of his scales against my skin. Despite what he was, I loved him, completely and irrevocably. So this wouldn't take much of a leap of faith. Yes, I said finally. A manic cheer erupted, but I hardly noticed anything other than Max's joyous grin. He leaped to his feet and swept me into his arms, and my heart swelled so much for this alien king that it hurt.
I love you so much,
he murmured in my ear.
And notice how we've lost a certain armed segment of our audience?
Very clever, and not surprising given that we're on live TV, I choked out, clinging to him while eyeing the nearest camera drone. But I have one condition before I marry you. He pressed a tender kiss to the stray tears wetting my cheek.
Name it.
Promise me that we'll always be honest with each other, I implored, seeking reassurance in his gaze. About anything. Always. No more secrets.
I promise,
he replied without hesitation, his otherworldly eyes brimming with happiness.
I don't have any more anyway. You know everything there is to know about me.
Then let's get married, I declared, and a fresh wave of tears and laughter bubbled up from the warmest part of my soul. He exhaled deeply and pulled away, his purple lightning eyes shining brightly as he slipped the leaf ring with little caterpillar bites onto my finger. Our lips met in a soft kiss that held a hell of a lot of heat and scandalous promises for later, which made the crowd cheer even louder. "When is the big day?" Smitha shouted in her lovely Indian accent, her hands clasped over her heart while tears drenched her face. "Yes, we need to plan," Oreo, the slightly more high-strung member of my style team, said with a hysterical note in her voice. "Tomorrow!" Someone yelled in an unnaturally high-pitched voice. I narrowed my eyes in their direction and spotted Umo, the show's producer, stepping his short orange body behind a group of much taller people. Of course he'd suggest that, so he could get the mad scramble and the big day all on film.
"I can wait that long if you can,"
Max rumbled, his breath over my skin making me shiver. "Sure, who can't plan a whole bride look in less than a day?" Oreo shrieked and stalked away, Smitha right behind her. I winced, feeling their pain, especially in their 6-inch heels. "What about Roxanne? She couldn't get here in a day, and even if she could..." I shook my head because I did not want Max's daughter anywhere near this death pit of a planet. Or my parents, for that matter.
"No, she can't come here. But as long as the wedding is aired on TV, I think she might forgive me for not being invited."
"Okay. Tomorrow," I agreed with a smile. I was about to dive in for another kiss like the selfish, horny fangirl I was, but a loud bang split Max and me apart and silenced everyone's excitement. My pulse jolted at the sound. It came again, near the direction of the crashed ships.
"Stay close,"
Max commanded, gripping my arm. Murmurs rippled through the cast and crew as we all stared down the beach. The sounds were too far away to tell what was happening, but when the bang came again, I knew exactly what it was. "Mike," I said through gritted teeth.
"What's he doing?"
Max asked. "Taking his anger out on my ship? If he can't have it, no one can." Shrugging, my pilot, Dark, strolled up to me with her hands in her pants pockets and a few tear tracks on her porcelain skin. "Either that or he's pissed I crashed it." She pulled me into a sideways hug. "You made me cry, Captain. I never cry." I touched my head to hers, some of her short pink hair fluttering into my cheek. "Sometimes it's all I do, but today they're happy tears." "Good," she breathed. Philip, Mosley, Michael, and Pete came to join us, all part of my crew in one way or another. Intentionally or otherwise, they surrounded Rain, with my cat Major perched on her shoulder. Rain kept her gaze cast downward at the sand, her human-like lashes clumped together slightly with unshed tears. She glanced up and caught me staring, and a big, watery smile dashed across her face. I quickly looked away, wanting to stay in my happy bubble without her popping it. Mosley, my muscly engineer, parked himself in the sand between me and the continuing loud crashes.
"Want me to go tear his limbs off and save our ship?"
"No." I focused on Max again, as a flicker of hope ignited inside me. Hope that maybe, together, we could conquer the darkness known as Earth's space fleet and live happily ever after. We all have a wedding to plan. "It seems like the drama is over, everyone," Umo shouted. A curl of cigar smoke wafted up out of his orange head, still facing the direction the loud bangs were coming from. "At least the part I have no control over. So, take your places. We're going live again in 60 seconds.
"But Umo," Pete whined as he rushed toward him, "the great reveal of who lived through the shipwreck already happened the first time we went live. Can't we just give everyone a break?"
Oreo shouted from somewhere. Everyone winced at the shrill volume and panic in her voice, even though she was nowhere to be seen.
Give everyone a break to plan a wedding, I mean,"
Pete amended.
"No!"
Umo puffed smoke directly up into Pete's face.
"The show must go on. 45 seconds, everyone!"
A mad scramble erupted across the beach as everyone rushed to the stage, except for my crew, for obvious reasons, and Max and me, and very hungry caterpillar number 1 in his jar in the sand. I'd been hurrying for the last several days, weeks even. I just needed a moment of calm with the alien warrior king who'd chosen me. While my crew and Rain idled closer to the continuous banging noises, Major reached out from Rain's shoulder and tapped my head twice, a little kitty smile on his cute kitty face. Either that was a congratulations tap or a good slave tap. Hard to tell with him. Laughing, I gazed up at Max. "You sure about this? Because my emotional baggage has emotional baggage, and I wasn't that great at marriage the first time around." One side of his mouth curled into a smile, and he grazed his fingertips along my jaw in a tender caress.
"I've never been sure about anything in my life, and your ex-husband could never love you like I do."
I leaned into his touch, soaking his words into my soul. It was a marriage of convenience because I got pregnant.
"Well, that's not what this is. My heart belongs to you whether you carry my child or not. I would have asked you to marry me regardless, not just to get rid of Earth's space fleet on live TV either."
He shook his head slowly, his gaze searching my face.
"You are everything to me, Nira."
I collapsed into a sniffling puddle in his arms, the truth of his words settling into my bones, strengthening them with my overwhelming love for this alien warrior king. A fade. My love for him had even eclipsed that part of him, a shock to no one more than me.
"Fan favorite Nira Kotrabin," Pete announced from the stage. "Did she survive the shipwreck, or did she succumb to death's greedy hands?"
I figured I had about 45 dramatic seconds before I had to step on stage and prove I was very much alive, even though the audience already knew because of Max's proposal. But with the temper tantrum currently echoing across the beach with each brutal hit to my poor ship, would I even make it to see my own wedding day? My honeymoon? The birth of my baby? I had a whole fleet of enemies now, and only a little bit of time to drag them all down. Chapter 2. Rain. Email date 7/30/2640 to Captain of Stars and Mother of Lucy at email.com from sano@universe.com. Subject: The King's Proposal. Status: Undeliverable. Reason: Inbox full. Cat emoji holding heart. So happy for you, Nira.
Chapter 3. Max. I just don't like it is all. Michael crossed his giant arms across his chest and huffed. I'm tired of being associated with the bad guys. Hours later, after the Who Lived, Who Didn't Die reveal on Alien Love Island, most of us gathered at the beach house. Everyone had gone to bed early except Nira, Michael, and me. We sat in the living room in front of the muted television, which was looping my impromptu marriage proposal. Every time Nira mouthed the word yes, her fathomless dark eyes brimming with tears, my heart spun in wild circles all over again. I could hardly believe she'd agreed to marry a Fade clone like me, but her belief in me, after everything she'd been through with Rain, meant more to me than I could ever hope to explain. But I would sure try to for the rest of her life. Nira frowned sympathetically at Michael. Mike and Michael don't even sound the same. You're two different people. You're two different species. No one's going to mistake you for him, and vice versa. Not even if he grows green horns like yours, I told him with a clap on the back. You're not the bad guy. You're fine. Chuckling, Nira jerked her thumb at me. See, even your worst enemy thinks you're a good guy. It can't get any better than that. Well, I still think he needs to be off this planet to avoid any confusion, Michael said. Either that, or he can change his name because I can't change mine. You can't? Nira asked, doing a double take at the lube bottle someone had left on the end table. Michael shook his head. It was given to me by the Killian god Rishva. Rishva's their god of names, I filled in. The Killian culture has gods for pretty much everything, while we have only the one goddess. Oh, Nira said, nodding and licking her lips at the lube. It makes sense you know this. Know thy enemy, as they say. Good thing I know mine, too. I'm glad, I said, because I may have bought us some time with my proposal, but not much. If Earth Space Fleet killed us the night before our wedding, the public outcry would be severe, even for them. Yeah, but once the show's audience forgets about us, it's lights out unless we can turn the tables fast. She grinned, a striking one full of teeth and cunning. But guess who has a plan? Michael scooted to the edge of the couch and rubbed his large green hands together. Please don't say anyone other than you. It's me. I'm the one with a plan. Her grin never faltering, she fished out something from her black Space Fleet uniform pocket and held it out to me. I blinked down at her palm, not quite sure if what I was seeing was real or not. Larks's scale? If by that you mean Roxanne's great-aunt's scale, then yes. You can tell just by looking at it? Yes, they're akin to human fingerprints, each one different from the other, but... Roxanne gave you this? Nira nodded. She said not to tell you, but you and I agreed no more secrets. When it comes to her other secrets, though, my lips are sealed. I see. What kind of secrets would my own daughter be keeping from me? Hopefully not any as big as the one I was keeping from her, that her dad was a Fade clone. Chuckling softly, Michael reached out and traced the intricate patterns etched into the scale's surface. This is news to you that teenagers have secrets? I suppose so, I sighed. Max, Nira said, her voice soft yet urgent. We can use this scale to lure Earth Space Fleet into a trap they won't be able to resist. And when they come for us, we'll show the world what they truly are and what they've done to the both of us. Michael winged up an eyebrow. On live TV, I'm guessing. You guessed right, Nira said. Now, the part I haven't worked out yet is how a tiny scale will bring about their downfall. Because when I said I had a plan, I didn't say it was a good, well-thought-out one. It's against universal law to sell Xenox scales for profit, I said, since we're on the critically endangered species list. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat, something he often did when I brought up the topic of our near extinction. We already know that Earth Space Fleet doesn't give two shits about laws, though. Nira whistled. Okay, wow, that means Roxanne knew exactly what she was doing when she gave me this scale. She might be even smarter than her dad. Oh, there's no question about that, I chuckled, my heart's near overflowing with love and pride for my daughter. We could plant the scale where they kept me prisoner. They won't be able to tell it's not from me, assuming they find it and try to sell it, which is assuming a lot. But if they do find out we planted it, it will paint an even bigger target on us, Nira. She grinned, her dark eyes sparkling. Unless we can bring them down before they get out their little paintbrushes to do their target painting. I could hear the determination in her voice, but also the trepidation. This was a dangerous plan, one that would put both our lives at risk. But with each passing day it became more evident that we had no choice. Earth Space Fleet's corruption was spreading like an infection, devouring everything in its path, and taking lives with it. We couldn't let that continue. For us, for Roxanne, for the entire Xenox planet. Soon, before we lost, or nearly lost, anyone else we cared deeply for because of Earth's space fleet. I could see it in her eyes. That same fire that burned within me. We were bound together by our shared loss, and we would fight together. For justice, for retribution, and for us. Then we'll use the scale to expose them, I agreed. We'll set a trap. As one, we looked at Michael, who shrugged. What else am I going to do on a reality TV love show? He asked, sounding so bitter that Nira winced. Who's going to do the scale planting and the luring, though? Not either of you, obviously. Someone willing to put themselves in harm's way, Nira said. Someone who understands the risks, but is willing to take them for the greater good. Who do you have in mind? I asked, knowing she already had her answer. Nira bit her lip. Pete? Michael groaned and rubbed his forehead, even though we all knew he loved Pete in a brotherly sort of way. I nodded. He's already shown his willingness to help us. He's proven himself resourceful and trustworthy, and he knows how to handle attention, both wanted and unwanted. Nira squeezed my hand. We give him some sort of disguise and an Earth Space Fleet uniform and... We'll never hear the end of it? Michael sighed and shook his head. The guy already walks through life thinking he's starring in an action movie all the time. Nira burst out laughing. Oh my God, you're right! Do you think he'd be willing to risk his life for us once again? I asked, drawing tight spirals on Nira's palm with my thumb. No question he would, Michael answered. All right, I agreed. Let's bring him in on this. Tomorrow? Nira looked from my thumb to me to the lube, more pressing ideas evident in her fevered gaze. Tomorrow, I growled, because right now I needed to show my wife-to-be how happy she'd made me with one simple word. Yes. I wanted to hear her say it 1,000 more times, hear her moan it while she came apart in my arms. And that right there is my cue to leave. Looking between us, Michael stood and started for the sliding glass door. But don't worry, I'll stay close enough to make sure nobody kills the almost newlyweds. Thanks, Michael, I muttered, already reaching for Nira, already lost to her. Thanks, Michael, she repeated, her gaze dipping to my lips. Yeah, he said from somewhere far away. Didn't have a refractory period. She looked up at me and smiled. Nothing but devotion and love written into every corner of her face. Lucky you. Lucky us. We have our entire lives together. We have time, I reminded her with a single kiss. Lucky us indeed. With a contented sigh, she took my hand and clasped it to her chest. With all that sex, how many babies do you think we'll be making? I pressed a kiss to her temple, another to her cheek. How many do you want? My answer used to be 1, but now, with you, with the Xenox so close to extinction, I'll settle for 200. Laughter burst from the depths of my soul. God has helped me. This woman might just kill me, and I would enjoy every second of it.
Chapter 4. Nira. Early the next morning, I found Rain, dressed in a striped overall dress in what was left of my ship. I'd been restless, nervous, not so much about the wedding, but about what came after. The downfall of Earth's space fleet. Brought about by a single Xenox scale, though? No, I needed something more, like Rain's proof. Nira, Hello. She smiled, her whole face brightening like she was surprised I was there. Well, me too. I closed the brig door behind me, one of the few that still worked. My crew had arrived long before to start the repair process. Congratulations on your engagement to Max, she said, her voice almost musical. He's quite the catch. Thanks, I replied as conflicting emotions surged within me. Did you know that I would end up with Max, a fade like you, when you signed me up for this show? She tilted her head, causing her silk-spun blonde hair to swish against her cheek. Why do you say that? That's not an answer, Rain. But I didn't make him love you, she said softly, shuffling her feet in her sensible shoes. I can do some things, but not that. Love can conquer even the most complex of obstacles, even him being a fade. Besides, it's not that hard at all to love you. Even me. Especially me, even though I didn't have emotions already built into me like Max did. My stomach twisted while a strange sense of sadness washed over me. I didn't want to talk about this anymore. Despite the tension coiling between us like an invisible thread, I pushed on to what was most important. The plan. That's it? Rain asked after I explained it. You think a maximum of 20 years in prison for one person who might try to sell the Xenox scale on the black market will bring about the end for Earth's space fleet? Yeah, that and all the proof you have once it's leaked. She shook her head. Most of it's encrypted. So decrypt it. It's not that simple. Their firewalls and anti-hacking measures are a lot more advanced than the word search I emailed you. I blinked. The what? Never mind, she said, gazing down at the floor. I can decrypt everything, sure, but decrypting and leaking the files from their original source will hold much greater weight than a fade doing it. That way, Earth's space fleet can't say the files were tampered with. Not if it comes directly from them, I said with a nod. Okay, so what do you suggest? Plug a decryptor into any of their computers and then send them out to every news agency in the universe via the same computer. That can be done at the same time the Xenox scale is planted, if you still want to go that route, but I would suggest you bug and track the scale. In case we overhear any tasty nuggets of space fleet wisdom, I agreed hesitantly, trying to quell the doubts gnawing at the back of my mind. This was a lot to ask of Pete to do for us. Mosley can get me a tracker and a bug, and I can get you a decryptor small enough for transport. I nodded slowly, and couldn't help but wonder if I could trust her. Was she really as dedicated to our cause as she claimed, or was she simply using us for her own gains? But what kind of gain would that be? Continue existing on a rogue planet that she'd created while in her weathered house with furniture and decorations from our old home? Avoid being killed by me? Punish herself for ripping away my favorite part of life 10 years ago? I glanced over at the computer in the corner, billowing up blue bubbles, all of which popped steadily. This was part of Rain's anti-hacking measures to prevent herself from being taken over by Earth's space fleet again. And since she hadn't tried to kill me once, I supposed it was working. Perhaps she really did want to take down the enemy as much as I did. Anything else? I asked with a sigh. Thinking about Rain exhausted me, which was part of why I'd avoided it for so many years. There is one more thing. Rain winced as she pulled up a holographic news report on her built-in computer. The image showed a doctored photo of Max and me, our faces twisted into sinister sneers. Below the picture was a bold headline, Nira, Kotrabin, and Max, enemies of the state. I snorted. Seriously? Those pics have obviously been doctored. I've never had abs like that in my life. Of course I don't have any proof of this, but I would bet this is all Earth's space fleet. They're aware of the tightening noose around their necks, so they launched a massive propaganda campaign against you. They think that if they manipulate public opinion with skillful precision, spreading false information and painting you both as villains in the eyes of the unsuspecting masses, no one will believe anything you have to say. She zoomed in on part of the article that claimed I abandoned my crew during a critical mission, leaving them to die while I fled to save myself. The bunch of cheese dicks, I whispered. I don't think they were counting on Max's proposal yesterday, and since that aired on live TV with your crew right there, it proved that your crew is still very much alive. If you want, I can send stills of them from yesterday to this tabloid news rag to counter it, as well as video of a certain respected Space Fleet captain throwing a tantrum by destroying his own ship. Rains smiled diplomatically, as if all of this would be the polite thing to do. A little bitch slap from us to them. I'm for it, I agreed with a nod. Do it. Her right eye twitched, and her holographic computer sprang up out of it, held in place with orange holographic cubes that stemmed into her artificial retina. Earth Space Fleet's desperation is showing. The more they lie and act out, the closer we must be to exposing their crimes. Let them come at us with their lies, I said, determination sizzling through my veins. We'll tear down their house of cards, and when we do, the whole universe will know the truth.
Chapter 5. Max. "Hey, Pete," Nira said, her voice warm and inviting, yet tinged with an undercurrent of urgency as we stepped up onto the platform. We kinda need your help." Other than Pete, the platform was empty. Everyone else bustled around the beach below to prepare for our wedding, which would begin in 2 hours. No doubt Pete was helping by staying out of the way. He glanced up from his frothy yellow drink with an umbrella in it, surprise flickering across his face. "Does it require hair removal again?" "Not this time," I assured him. Nira looked at me with a question in her eyes, but I shook my head. We weren't going to get into that. Not now, not ever. Not with anyone, in writing or verbally. Nope. "Anyway," I prompted. "Yes, She took a deep breath before explaining our plan to lure Earth's space fleet into a trap using the Xenox scale. As I listened to Nira lay out the details, I realized how much trust we were putting in Pete. We were asking him to do so much, and if anything happened to him, I would be devastated. We all would be. Over time, he'd grown on me, and once we left here, I would truly miss him. However," she added, "this puts whoever does this at great risk, and we can't ask you to do this without being completely honest about what's at stake." Her big brown eyes searched Pete's face for any hint of reluctance. Pete's bleached hair caught the bright sunlight as he ran a hand through it, worry etching lines on his usually jovial face. That's a lot to take in. But I know how much this means to you, and I just can't stand by and let Earth's space fleet do such shitty things, can I? They took people from you. Important people." His words stirred something within me, a mix of admiration and empathy. I knew all too well the pain of loss, and I could see it mirrored in Pete's eyes as he spoke. We had each suffered at the hands of death, and even though his daughter had suffered a natural illness, he knew that kind of grief well. "Are you sure about this, Pete?" Nira asked. "We don't want to force this decision on you." Pete took a deep breath, seeming to draw strength from some hidden wellspring of resolve. I'm sure. You can even film yourself if you want, Nira suggested. Pete's eyes widened. A hint for next time you want me to help save the universe? Lead with that. Nira laughed. Thank you, Pete, I said, stepping forward to clasp his hand. We'll have your back the whole time. I won't let you down, he replied. I'm going to go write myself a script with some stellar one-liners. Yeah, good idea. Nira scratched her head as we watched him hurry toward the crew beach house. This is asking too much, I said, taking Nira's hand. What if something goes wrong? What if he gets hurt? We'll have escape routes in place and backup plans if things go south. You and me will be close by, ready to jump in if needed. Trust the preparations. She was right, but still I couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. We were risking everything to expose the truth, and there was no guarantee of success. But that would come later. Right now, it was time to prepare for the wedding to my beautiful star. As the minutes ticked away, anticipation grew within me like a relentless tide. I waited on the beach in front of the flower-adorned altar while Alien Love Island's cast and crew murmured restlessly from their seats in neatly arranged rows. Every once in a while, they turned their expectant faces toward me, waiting and wondering. Me too. Nira was over 5 minutes late. Michael, sitting in the front row and thereby blocking the view of those behind him with his large green horns, leaned in and whispered, Say the word, and I'll go check on her. No, it's fine. I forced a swallow, my throat suddenly dry. Her style team's probably running a bit behind. You know how it is. Michael raised an eyebrow and chuckled. I don't, but okay. From the second row on the other side of the aisle, Nira's pilot, Dark, waved to catch my eye and then jerked her thumb to the back, signaling if I wanted her to go check. I shook my head. Fox, just leave it alone already. She'd be here when she was good and ready. I had no doubts. None. Nothing sat like a boulder in my chest, expanding with every passing second. Nope. Nothing. Michael leaned closer. If there was any way off this planet that wasn't crashed or damaged, I would tell you that maybe she's halfway across the galaxy by now. But there's not, so I won't. Thanks, I gritted out. He sighed and shook his head. I'm kidding. I'm trying to distract you and failing miserably. She loves you. She wouldn't do that to you. You know this. Did I? Or did she have lingering doubts about marrying her worst enemy?
Chapter 6. Nira. It's time, Oreo said, knocking on the bedroom door gently. Smitha and I are going to find our seats, okay? Unless you need anything. Tequila, more coffee, a lime green Slurpee made from the tears of your enemies with one of those swirly straws. I snorted a laugh. That's oddly specific. Are you sure that's not what you need? Yes, she said emphatically. I'll see you out there. Okay. Thank you, Oreo. I smoothed down the front of my drop-dead gorgeous dress and took a deep breath. This was it. No more doubts. No more fears. Just love and hope. At least for a little while, before all hell broke loose yet again, like it always did. But together, we'd handle it. Of that I was certain. Everything was ready. How the show had managed that in such a short time, I had no idea. Max had assured me that all I really had to do was recite my vows, just the standard pre-written kind for a normal Xenox wedding, and then kiss him. I was pretty sure I wouldn't fuck that up. I'd never really daydreamed about my wedding as a child. Other girls did, though, so I automatically assumed something was wrong with me. Was that kind of relationship not important to me? Was I afraid of commitment? Yes, and yes, I eventually realized, but that changed when I married Mike. We didn't have a fairy tale wedding, which was fine. I'd been happy and hopeful, exactly like I was feeling now. But this time was different. This time, I knew exactly who and what I was marrying. And even so, I still loved Max with all my heart. I turned to fully embrace my future with the Xenox Fade Clone King when a faint breeze rustled through the open window of the beach house, carrying with it the scent of the salty air and spicy cologne. My feet stalled long before my brain caught up and then classified the strange mix of smells into flashing warning signs. From behind, a muscled arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me backwards. Panic surged through me as I struggled, kicking and flailing, but it was no use. They were too strong, and I was wearing a goddamn wedding dress. "Hello, Nira," a chillingly familiar voice whispered into my ear. "Miss me?" "Let go of me, you fucking monster!" I spat, recognizing the voice of my ex-husband. He had no right to be here, no right to touch me, but he didn't seem to care, and no one was around to hear me scream. "Monster," he chuckled darkly. "That's rich coming from you. Now, we're going to have a little chat, and you're going to cooperate, or else things are going to get ugly." "Is that a threat?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage as I tried to squirm out of his grip. "Consider it a promise," he replied coldly. With lightning speed, I brought my elbow up and drove it into his stomach. He doubled over, gasping for breath, and I quickly broke away from him. I scrambled across the room and grabbed Max's machete hidden beneath my bouquet, leveling it at Mike as he straightened up. "Ah, Nira, always so feisty," he sneered, reaching behind his back to retrieve the twin daggers I'd stolen from him. He must have stolen them back from inside the little trunk at the end of the bed Max and I slept in. "I've missed that about you." "Get out of my life!" I snarled, tightening my grip on the machete. "You first," he said. In the bedroom cramped with 6 beds, we circled each other like predators sizing up their prey. My heart pummeled my ribcage as I searched for any sign of weakness, any opening I could exploit. My gun, I thought, was in the upstairs bathroom. Why? Well, why not? Better to be prepared while vulnerable than shit out of luck. As we circled one another, I thought about Max waiting for me at the altar. I couldn't let this man take away my chance at happiness. With fierce determination burning in my chest, I lunged forward, my machete slicing through the air. He easily dodged it. "What the fuck do you want?" I yelled, my blood boiling. He lashed out. The wind from his daggers barely missed me as I ducked to the side. Regaining my footing, I slashed at him again. His reflexes were quick. He leapt out of the way, the machete barely grazing his shoulder. A smirk formed on his lips, his steely blue eyes unemotional. "I can't believe you're marrying him," he taunted. "A fade, Nira. How could you, after everything that's happened?" "He's more of a man than you will ever be," I spat, launching myself forward. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him reeling backward. It wasn't enough to stop him, though. He retaliated with a swift, stinging jab to my side, forcing me to stagger away from the force of the blow. "You would marry a fade after what they've done, everything they've taken?" he sneered. "You're weak, pathetic. You're thinking with your pussy, not your head." "Okay, Mr. Make Everyone on this planet love you. Naked asked if you loved her, so does that mean you got some tentacle action? Tell me, who haven't you already fucked on Alien Love Island?" He shrugged. "A means to an end." "For what? So you can continue siding with the people who murdered our daughter? Do you not see how completely fucked up that is?" He shot out his hand and yanked my hair painfully, ruining its perfect style that had taken hours to complete. The ache in my scalp brought tears to my eyes. All of this served as a distraction for him to slip the machete from my grip and throw it to the floor behind him with a loud clatter. It wasn't supposed to be her. It was only the start of a test to see if it could be done.
"A test that took your daughter!"
I shouted, aiming my voice toward the open window. Would someone hear me? Would they get here in time? In time for what? I didn't know. I twirled myself around by my hair in his grip and stomped my heel into the top of his boot. Grunting, he released me. I spun to face him again, now defenseless, with him blocking the way to the door. "It didn't go as planned," he said. "We were going to blame the Fade hack on the Xenox, create a universal outcry so they'd flee their planet and seek refuge. So Earth's space fleet could have it." It wasn't a question, because it didn't need to be. I saw the truth in his cold eyes. Oh yes, I know all about the valuable minerals in its core. I had no idea Rain would receive the hack first. The signal came down from Earth Space Fleet satellites at the exact time she chose to climb that fucking mountain. I didn't know that's how it was going to work, or even when they were going to do it. It would have never been Lucy if Rain hadn't climbed that fucking mountain. Sure, blame the Fade, not your employer. Makes total sense, Mike. Don't you get it, Nira? He tilted his head, for some reason reminding me of a rabid dog. After the first hack, we couldn't hack any of the other Fade. If the plan had worked, we would have been rich. You and I wouldn't have had to live in that crappy house. And that's worth the death of our daughter? I hissed. My mind raced with memories of our past. The pain, the heartache. Lucy, with her infinite energy and zeal for life, snuffed out much too soon. It had broken me beyond repair, had shattered my soul into 1,000 jagged pieces. And Mike had known about all of it. But now I had Max, someone who truly cared for me and our baby. And I refused to let my ex-husband take me away from him. I'm pregnant, you bastard, with Max's baby. His eyes widened, and for a split second his guard dropped. That was all the opening I needed. I lunged forward, grabbing his wrists and twisting them sharply so he'd be forced to drop his daggers. Before they hit the floor, I snatched them midair. He was now unarmed, but I wasn't quite done with him yet. I jerked my head to the bed behind him. Sit! The weight of my ex-husband's gaze was almost suffocating as he stared at me, trying to decipher the truth in my words. I could see the little gears turning in his head, calculating the odds of my claim being true. Are you really so desperate that you'd use an innocent life as a pawn? He spat, venom dripping from every syllable. Desperate? I laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. You're the one who attacked me on my wedding day. I'm just fighting for my family. With a Fade, Nira. How could you forget? His voice cracked with disbelief. How could you forget? You just admitted the Fade were innocent and that you still work for the bad guys. I leveled both blades right at his stupid face. Sit. I won't tell you again. Fine, he snarled. But he didn't sit. With a sudden burst of speed, he charged towards me, a woman holding twin daggers with questionable sanity while wearing a wedding dress. I almost couldn't believe his stupidity either. Time slowed. His fists were clenched and fury blazed in his eyes. I braced myself, ready to meet his attack head-on, but at the last second he feinted left, attempting to catch me off guard. I barely managed to sidestep his advance, especially in heels, and block his reach for one of his blades. "You lose again, sucker," I taunted, trying to keep my voice steady. He pivoted and swung a wild haymaker in my direction. I ducked under the blow, my messed-up hair whipping across my face as I narrowly avoided the hit. He lunged again. My body moved instinctively, fueled by adrenaline, by determination. I had fought for my life countless times before, but this time was different. This time there was more at stake than just my own survival. As he snatched for his blade again, I countered with a swift kick to his knee, forcing him off balance. He stumbled backward, pain flashing across his face, but I didn't give him a chance to recover. Closing the distance between us, I delivered a fierce uppercut to his jaw. He sprawled to the ground while I shook out my screaming knuckles. "Stay down," I warned, my chest heaving as I fought to catch my breath. 2 pairs of furry handcuffs lay on a nearby trunk, so I picked those up, but I left the leg spreader bar and the colorful assortment of dildos. Didn't want old Mikey to get the wrong idea. "Go to hell," he snarled, spitting blood onto the floor. But despite his bravado, defeat shone in his eyes. The realization that he had lost our fight because he was a losing loser who loses, and with it any remaining claim on my life. "You forget, I've already been there for the last 10 years. I cuffed his wrist to the nearest bedpost with a satisfying snap of the fuzzy handcuffs. "And for the years I was married to you." I hauled his other wrist to the same bedpost and cuffed his other hand there too. Then I cuffed his ankles to the other bedpost. "I'll be back, and I'll bring my new husband with me," I said, collecting all the weapons I could find just in case. "I'm sure he'll have a lot to say to you. I let you live, but I can't guarantee he will. I'm sure he'll put those dildos to good use, and not in a fun, kinky way either." I strode toward the bedroom door, leaving him broken and defeated on the cold, unforgiving floor, with the fragments of his shattered ego scattered around him. "I miss her too, you know," he croaked out, his voice barely audible. "Then act like it," I replied, my voice icy. "Do something right for once in her memory." When he didn't say anything, I turned out the lights on him. "That's what I thought," I added, then left. I put one shaky foot in front of the other, toward the man I loved, the man who offered me a future that was worlds away from the darkness of my past. And I would not let anything stand between us, least of all my shitty ex-husband. Only he'd hurt me worse than I thought, I realized as I hauled myself out of the beach house. My breaths came out in ragged gasps, and the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. My right leg hurt like a mother, and my head throbbed. My once pristine, starlit dress now bore the stains of my struggle, splotches of red standing out like gruesome flowers against the silvery fabric. Even though Mike hadn't killed me, Oreo just might for ruining this dress. "Max," I whispered, his name giving me strength. "I'm coming. Don't start without me." I probably should have stopped in the bathroom to bandage myself up, but the wedding was all that mattered. Max and our baby were all that mattered. Nothing could keep me away from our future together. As I rounded the corner of the beach house, my heart leapt at the sight of Max at the makeshift altar a few yards away from me. A grand arch adorned with jungle flowers cascaded over a thick tree trunk, which was the altar itself, and a pulsing, radiant amethyst jewel sat on top. The chairs, in perfectly arranged rows, twinkled with multicolored fairy lights and luminous flowers, and everyone seated within them were dressed to impress. The hovering camera drone swiveled to face me, and then swept through the air at full speed, Everyone gathered turned to follow their progress, and a murmur rippled through the crowd as they took in the sight of me, bruised and bloodied, but unbroken. My gaze locked with Max's at the altar as I dropped my weapons and limped closer. He looked so resplendent in a purple cloak, and I did not. He snapped into a sprint, his lightning eyes flashing with worry and fear. Several more people raced toward me, but the sun was too bright and the dimming shadows were too dark to see who they were. In an instant, Max was by my side, the first, even though he'd been the furthest away.
"Nira, what happened?"
"Sorry I'm late," I replied through gritted teeth, wincing as the pain in my side flared up. My hand rose instinctively to cover the pain in my side, and my fingers came away slicked with crimson. "I got caught in a little, traffic." Then someone turned the lights out, and I collapsed.
Chapter 7. Max. "Nira!" I lunged to catch her before she fainted. "Get a doctor!" Anxiety speared through me at the sight of my bride. What had happened? I'd seen her just a few hours ago when we'd talked to Pete, and now she looked near death on what should have been the happiest day of our lives. I would fucking destroy whoever had done this to her. Michael crouched down next to me. Are those slash wounds in her side from a dagger? Bile climbed up my throat when I saw what he pointed at. A single deep cut, too small to be from a machete, but about the right size for a dagger. The daggers she'd stolen from her ex? Had he done this to her because she was marrying me? I leaped to my feet, a growl escaping my throat that made the approaching doctor and several others shrink back. "Whoa, steady," Michael said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "You stay with your wife. I'll check the beach house." "Give me some room," the doctor said as he knelt next to Nira. Thankfully, it was her ship's doctor, a kindly older gentleman, not the drunkard on the staff of Alien Love Island. From his medical bag, he extracted something in the shape of a pill and broke it in half underneath her nose. Immediately, her eyes snapped open, hard and sharp and cunning before they lit into a smile when she saw me. "Oh, hi," she said. Relief flooded through my veins. "You're hurt," I forced out around the knot of emotion tying up my throat. "Clearly," she muttered. "But I'm still standing, aren't I?" With an unsteady hand, I smoothed her messy hair away from her face. "No." "Oh," she sighed deeply. "Well, shoot." "Do you know what did this to you?" the doctor asked, his expression grim as he took in the cut on her side. "A wild animal?" She shook her head. "But if by that you mean Captain Mike Early, then yes." "I will kill him. Slowly. Piece by fucking piece." This wasn't just a promise, but a vow. The first of two I planned on making today. Nira's crew seemed to be on board with that idea. Across from me, Dark seethed, her expression brimming with hate. Mosley cracked his knuckles and split the toothpick in his mouth in two with a simple flex of his jaw. Philip, her communications officer, just nodded. "Yeah, I'm afraid you'll have to get in line." "After me," Oreo said, but her attention was focused more on Nira and less on the state of her dress, makeup, and hair while she clasped her hands to her chest. Nira smiled up at everyone. "Sounds like a party. Looks like I've already brought the hangover feeling." "We'll get you patched up and feeling up to your wedding in no time," the doctor assured her. "Think you can stand?" "Only one way to find out." With my help, she wobbled to her feet and leaned hard against me. "Swear you'll wait for me for a take two on our wedding?" I huffed out a humorless laugh. "I swear it." Gently, I scooped her up in my arms, and a small caravan started toward the beach house. A concerned murmur went through the crowd of onlookers as they parted for us, sending Nira well wishes and telling her she looked beautiful. My sentiments exactly, I told her when she snorted. So blood does it for you, huh? She rested her cheek against my chest and closed her eyes. I'll keep that in mind. You know what I mean. You would have to try really hard to look any other way than perfect. Always. You're just saying that because I agreed to marry you. Somehow, I chuckled and held her tighter in my arms. She sighed against my silken purple wedding robe and snuggled in closer. Michael met us at the back door of the beach house, dangling 2 pairs of handcuffs, both empty and stained with blood. Are you fucking kidding me? Nira asked him. At least he left a trail of blood with him out the window when he escaped, Michael said. I can go follow. No, you stay, I told him, frustration fizzing up through the crevices between my scales. I'll deal with him later. Michael gave me a nod as he let us pass inside. I laid Nira out on the couch, flinging the lube we'd used just last night to the floor. I'd learned my lesson long ago not to take anything for granted, because things could change so drastically from one moment to the next. Still, this was a harsh reminder. Both the doctor and Nira's style team got to work, none of them in each other's way, each working quietly and efficiently, their sole focus on Nira and her comfort. About half an hour later, Nira sat upright and smiled at me, looking like the battle she'd gone through had never happened. And it never should have. But I'd deal with that fuckser later. As our fingers intertwined, the weight of the day began to lift from my shoulders, replaced by love and determination. Time to marry the most extraordinary human I'd ever met. Hand in hand, we made our way back to the wedding. Phosphorescent flora and twinkling fairy lights glowed with a soft iridescent light and formed an aisle leading to the altar. As always on Clio 3, the sunset sky was a palette of radiant, shifting hues. After kissing her on the temple, I made my way up the aisle without her so she could make her grand entrance. Soft strains of the Xenox Battle/Marriage March began to play. The song was played for both events, not because the events were the same, obviously, but because they were both momentous, serious occasions. The music resonated deep within my alien hearts. As soon as I took my place, all eyes turned to the beginning of the aisle. There she was, radiant in her gown. My pulse stuttered, same as it always did when I saw her. But today, despite her fuckser of an ex-husband, despite a second round of makeup and hair, she looked absolutely stunning. So much that she took my breath away all over again. A rush of emotions fizzed up out of me, unlike any I'd ever experienced. Awe and hope, love and happiness. I'd been waiting for this moment for so long, even though we'd only officially known each other for a few weeks. Time didn't seem to matter to my hearts. She floated toward me in her magnificent gown, woven from threads of interstellar stardust, unmarred and as perfect as she was. I didn't know how they'd done it, not once but twice, but Oreo and Smitha stood at the beginning of the aisle with obvious delight. So much so that they held hands, both with happy grins on their faces. Good for them for finding love here as well. By the time Nira stood at the altar across from me, I didn't think I'd drawn a breath since she'd started up the aisle. When Xenox began marrying humans, our wedding vows had to be changed slightly to reflect the unique bond between aliens and their earthly brides and the harmonious fusion of two very different worlds. I'd said the standard Xenox vows at my wedding to Bex, so I'd had to do some last-minute relearning, all thanks to Axel's 4 a.m. reminder. You do remember you're marrying a human, right? Better learn the differences or else. humans are sometimes prone to be bridezillas. His message had sent me down a rabbit hole that I'd had to cleanse from my mind with an hour of cat videos. I took my bride-to-be's hand and inhaled a deep breath. We didn't have pastors or priests or any other licensed marriage officiant like humans did. It was just us, our friends, and the Xenox goddess looking down on us from above. I, Max, King of Xenox, I began, promise to journey with you through the boundless expanse of the rest of our lives. With every joy we experience and every challenge we encounter, I vow to cherish and protect you. And I vow my complete honesty, my beautiful star, my human bride. I promise to ease your transition to Nira, Queen of Xenox, to help me lead in any capacity you desire. Queen Nira, oh my God, she muttered, her face flushing. Kind of forgot about that part. I grinned. That was something we hadn't really discussed yet, but it was a bit of a given when you married a king. She was already a natural leader. I had no doubt she would be a fantastic queen. I promise to worship you in sickness and health. I promise to stand by your side, my heart's forever open, and to love you intensely and eternally, I finished. A rush of air heaved from her chest as she smiled up at me, her depthless brown eyes shimmering with love and light. How am I supposed to top that? She muttered. I laughed. So did the guests in the first few rows. You don't have to, I assured her. She nodded, took a deep breath, and began. I, Nira Kotrabin, human from the planet Earth, pledge to explore the wonders of the universe with you, Max, King of Xenox, my cosmic companion. I promise to embrace the mysteries of your world and to share the marvels of mine. I promise to be your anchor, your solace, and your earthly, trustworthy tether. I promise to love you unconditionally, to reach for the stars with you, and to find the extraordinary in every moment we share. To hear her say the words pounded my heart faster. This was real. Every moment, I almost couldn't believe it was finally happening. From my pocket, I retrieved the Ring of Eternity, crafted from rare Xenox metals and crystals. Slowly, I slipped it onto Nira's delicate ring finger of her left hand. It emitted a soft, pulsating glow, which meant that my goddess herself blessed this union. Not that I was nervous she wouldn't. Both she and Nira were cut from the same fierce design. Nira had no such ring for me. Xenox men were marked permanently with their bond in a much different way. My pants grew tight at the thought, my blood practically singing. My Kaksui thrummed within me and begged to be released. Now we kiss, I whispered. About time. She hooked her finger into my wedding robe and hauled me closer. I leaned down to devour Nira's mouth with mine. Everyone gathered on the beach threw their hands in the air, and a shower of iridescent sparkles rained down upon us. This was the Stardust blessing part of the wedding, a token of goodwill. Stardust held the collective wishes and dreams of everyone in the universe, and it was believed to bring good fortune and harmony to our union. The stardust sparkled like tiny diamonds in the air, and while I hungrily kissed my bride, my hands knotted tightly at the back of her head. I freed one to take hold of Nira's ringed hand and touch the celestial unity amethyst on the tree trunk altar. It was infused with the energy of my goddess, and as we touched it simultaneously, the jewel emitted a brilliant, otherworldly glow that enveloped us in a cocoon of shimmering light and glittering stardust. that hovered in midair, frozen in time. Our guests had disappeared, still on the beach with us, but non-existent in our goddess-made bubble of privacy. "Max, what?" Nira panted out, her attention caught between my kisses and the beauty of our starlit oasis. I swept her up against me, feeling all of her delicious curves, and growled into her neck. "Now comes the fun part of our wedding." "Yes, Nira," I breathed. "I almost want to tell you how sorry I am that I can't get enough of you. But I'm not, so I guess I won't." She chuckled and placed a kiss on my forehead. "I love you too." After she caught her breath, she asked, "Do we have to leave?" "No." "But I can hear the yes in your voice." "No," I said more forcefully. "How about now?" She sighed as she clasped my hand. "I can still hear it." "We'll have the rest of our lives together where we can lie naked like this." "Promise?" I already did, but yes. I leaned in to kiss the tip of her nose. "I promise again." Reluctantly, we untangled ourselves and began dressing again in preparation to show ourselves as the goddess-blessed, newly married couple we were. "Ready?" I asked, reaching for her hand. She took it and squeezed tightly. "You're sure they couldn't hear us?" "Because if my parents are watching the wedding ceremony on TV, they definitely heard." "I'm sure." With another press of our combined hands on the amethyst, our private oasis dissolved into a perfect sunset evening we'd technically left only seconds ago. At the sight of us, the crowd cheered.
Chapter 10. Rain. Accessing memory 0305070807 code 010507. System flux 8. Error 208. Failed. Hurt.
Error 208.
Memory accessed.
Why had I just killed little Lucy? Hurt. Error 208.
I wouldn't do this. This was not me acting of my own volition. I would never do this. So who had made me? Who? I began searching my databases for answers, and I would not stop until I found out who did this to me. There, right there, someone had hacked my central processing unit. I traced the hack's source all the way back and up toward a satellite owned by none other than Earth Space Fleet, Nira's employer. Oh, poor Nira. Poor Lucy.
Hurt. Error
208.
Hurt.
Time to put into place some anti-hacking measures for myself and for all other Fade, and then do some hacking of my own to find out why. Seconds later, I had my encrypted answer. Email loading. Decryption started.
Failed.
Decryption started.
Failed.
Decryption started.
Hurt.
Error. But
Hurt.
I
Hurt.
love
Hurt.
her. Memory 0305070807, code 010507. System flux 8. Memory terminated. Chapter 11. Nira. Hours after my wedding, Pete went into Earth Space Fleet's bunker to plant the bugged Xenox scale and insert the decryptor into one of their computers. He wasn't back yet. He was 15 minutes late. And I was not okay. I paced around the bungalow where we'd set up camp for the night, while gnawing off my fingernails. Max towered by the door, his thick arms crossed. We'd both changed out of our wedding attire and into our usual garb for the show. Pants and no shirt for him and a fancy dress for me. Michael sat on the bed, drumming his hands and feet in a nervous rhythm, while Mosley and Dark sat on the floor and stared at their holographic computers. The air was thick with tension, my senses heightened by the soft hum of tech and the roaring static coming from Pete's mic. About 14.5 minutes ago, his last words over his mic were,
"If life gives you lemons, make sure they're hand grenades."
After that, nothing. I wasn't even sure who he'd been talking to, if anyone. I glanced over at Max again while I twirled my gorgeous wedding ring around my finger. We should have been continuing our wedding day celebration. Instead, we were both wound up like corkscrews. Every second we left Pete alone in that bunker cemented the very air in my lungs. We should have never, ever let him go in there alone. We knew how dangerous Earth Space Fleet was. We fucking knew it, and we sent him in there anyway. Max caught me staring, and the worry lines fanning around his eyes softened infinitesimally. "Right, we're going after him." My voice snapped through the entire room louder than I intended, making Dark jump a little.
"Not you, Nira,"
Max said gently. "Yes, me, Max. Who else will? Not Mosley and Dark. They're just as much enemies as me since they took my side. Not you, since you don't blend in. And—"
"Not me,"
Michael growled, and stomped his green foot against the floor so hard that the bungalow trembled. "And not you either," I agreed with a heavy sigh. "I'm sorry, Michael, but—"
"But no."
Max crossed toward me and touched my belly gently.
"I helped make this baby inside of you. So like it or not, my opinion matters about where its mother does and does not go."
Over Mosley's computer, a delicate voice cleared her throat. "If I may make a suggestion." "What, Rain?" I'd invited her to listen in from my ship's brig. Much as I hated to admit it, we needed her help, since we basically had one shot at this. And look how well it was going. "What if I turn out the lights in the bunker?" she asked. Dark's eyes widened. "You can do that?" "I can try. That way they won't see any of you." "But we won't see any of them either," I countered. "It's almost 11 o'clock. They'll be heading to sleep anyway. Plus—" She stayed quiet for a long moment, but I could hear her hesitancy loud and clear. "What, Rain?" "Well, Max, as I'm sure you're aware, Nira won't rest until Pete is safe. Her selflessness has always been a beacon of light in an often dark and lonely world. She is so selfless that she'll willingly sacrifice herself for anyone in that room you're in, and Pete. If she makes a promise, she keeps it. And she made one to Pete. If anyone can get him out safely, she can. I know this for certain. Sending her in there increases the chances of getting Pete out alive by 67%. It would be a smart thing to do to trust her with your life." Without a word, Dark lifted her hand toward me for a high five. I obliged with a snort. I don't know about all that. 67% is still an F, but... I looked to Max, who closed his eyes briefly and shook his head.
If we do this, he began, his gaze imploring, you stay close, no exceptions.
I took his hand and squeezed. I can handle that. Mosley and Dark were already arming themselves over their black Space Fleet uniforms, so I guessed that answered if they were going or not. But Michael just sat there on the bed, looking tortured and forlorn.
Even in shadow, you can still see my horns.
He pointed to the top of his head as though we'd never noticed the spiraled appendages before.
Plus, someone should stay here in case Pete comes back. But if you're not back in 15 minutes, I'm coming in for you, horns and all, and the lights stay on. Let them see me come for my friends with all this planet's machetes in my hands.
Mosley gave him an approving nod as he strapped knives across his barrel chest and then pocketed a second decryptor.
Michael don't play.
Standing to his full height, Michael nodded back.
Not with the lives of those I care about, no. A second wave is a good idea,
Max said to him and slapped him on the shoulder.
But we won't need you. 67% improved odds with Nira is good enough for me.
Rain, cut the lights as close to 11 as you can. I looked to everyone in the room. We're going in. You got it, Captain, Rain said. Please bring the mics, earpieces, and flashlights with you for extra precaution. I'll be rooting for you. I exchanged a quick look with Max as I headed for the bathroom to change, and I read the same question in his eyes as I likely had in mine. Would I even be going if it weren't for Rain's involvement in our conversation? Was that 67% complete bullshit, so she could try to win me over again by getting in my good graces? And most importantly, was she really going to help us, or walk us straight into a trap? My trust issues had trust issues, in case that wasn't obvious. When we were armed with guns and a shit ton of machetes and knives, most of us waved to Michael. I hugged him, and my husband was completely okay with it, and set off for the bunker down the beach.
Stay close,
Max whispered in my ear, sliding his arm around my waist.
The both of you.
His warm breath danced tingles over my skin. I wished yet again we could have a normal wedding night, but for us, I supposed this was normal. Right by you, always, I replied, my pulse thrumming. He smiled at that, and I scooted in closer to him, my clothes already chafing. I'd become too used to wearing silks and satins. It felt strange wearing the uniform of those we were trying to bring down, but it was necessary to blend in, especially in the dark. We moved like shadows through the night until we came to the bunker in the sand. Ready, Rain? I whispered into my mic. The power is out, she said into my earpiece. Good luck. Well, I guessed we'd soon find out if we could trust her or not. I hefted open the bunker door and, sure enough, nothing but a black pit waited below. No sound floated from inside. With a nod, Dark and Mosley made their way down the ladder first, only the top lit by moonlight.
After you, Queen Nira,
Max whispered with a wave of his hand. I snorted softly. Yeah, that's going to take some getting used to. Mostly by feel, I carefully stepped down the ladder toward Dark and Mosley, who reached up helping hands to guide me down. Max closed the hatch door, and once the four of us were inside, Dark and I turned on our flashlights, careful to aim them away from Max and his glimmering scales. The bunker appeared empty so far, and quiet. Hopefully everyone was sound asleep. When we came to the first bend in the long hallway, a strong gust of air blasted from the right. Secondary airflow for when the power's out, I explained. We wouldn't want everyone to suffocate, would we? Mosley and Dark shrugged. We turned left, downwind from the strong breeze.
Where's the nearest computer for decrypting?
Max whispered. I was about to answer when something rattled behind us. A door, like someone was trying to force it open against the surging wind. Then it burst open with a loud slam. "Scatter!" I hissed. I dodged for the nearest door, yanked it open. The wind ripped the knob from my hands. Before it shut, I leapt inside. By myself. The other 3 weren't with me. "Shit!" I mouthed. I twisted the knob and fiddled with the lock, but both were worthless. I didn't dare start pounding on the door and announce that I was trapped in here. Trapped and alone in the wolf's den, separated from the only allies I had here. To make matters worse, my flashlight dimmed and blinked, dimmed and blinked. I smacked it against my thigh, willing it back to life. Panic rose like bile in my throat. I leaned against the cold metal wall, fighting for breath from my cemented lungs. Focus, Nira. You have to find Pete. My heart hummed in my ears. I had to trust Max and the others would find their way back to me before anyone knew we were here. There was no other choice. Forcing a shallow breath, I pushed myself off the wall and shined my blinking flashlight around the room I was in. An empty office, it looked like. Different from the one where I'd fought with Lieutenant Avery and my ex the last time I'd visited the bunker. The air felt heavy and stale, but I breathed it all in to ease my roaring panic. "Please," I whispered into the darkness. "Let us make it out of this alive." "Nira, what's happened?" Rain asked urgently in my earpiece. "We got separated. I'm on my own, and my flashlight's decided to be a little bitch." "Understood," Rain replied. "Give me a moment to track your mic's location and scan the area with heat-sensing tech." I waited, fingers fidgeting nervously with the hem of my uniform, as Rain did her thing. Outside the door, I thought I heard footsteps, slow and even as they made their way down the hall. "Got it," Rain said finally. "I see a clear path for you to follow to the bunker's brig. If Pete's been caught, he'll be in there, most likely. Do you see another door in the room you're in?" "No." I shined my weakening light around, moving it toward the center of the room. "Wait, yes, in the far corner." "Okay, that's the barracks. There's another hallway on the other side. According to the heat signatures inside, everyone's asleep, or at least not moving. Or lying wide awake with insomnia propping open their eyeballs. Ask me how I know this." "I know," she said almost too softly that I couldn't hear her. "If your light hasn't already gone out, I would consider shutting it off before you go in."
"Fuck me, Rain," I hissed through gritted teeth.
"I'm afraid I can't do that, Nira."
"You know how I feel about the dark," I said, tears springing to my eyes. "You know it."
"I know. I'm sorry." After a weighted pause, she said, "Would it help to know that the chances of Pete getting out of there safely have gone up to 75%? I narrowed my eyes at the door as I forced my feet toward it.
"Are you bullshitting me right now?"
"It depends on if it's helping you or not."
"I haven't decided. I'm putting an awful lot of faith in you right now that what you say is behind that door is the truth
when you have no reason to. I know. I can only hope that someday you might trust me again."
"Yeah, well, let's just focus on one door at a time." Like a lunatic, I powered my flashlight off. The darkness pressed in, coiling down my throat and thickening my airway with its slimy, menacing presence. Now it was only me and a cold-blooded killer in my ear. I felt for the doorknob and pulled it open.
Chapter 12. Max. Fucks. Nira had twirled out of my seeking hand and was trying to pull her with us toward a room on the right. But she'd gone left, and now we were separated by a hall of footsteps and wind and no way to get to her without being seen. We appeared to be in a large control room with holographic displays and a massive central command table. The walls were equipped with smart surfaces displaying real-time maps of rocky terrain and fade positions, all of which were fake, according to Rain. Just in case someone tried to enter and caught us here, I wedged a nearby chair underneath the doorknob. "You know," Mosley said, flexing his muscular arms as he sank down in front of a computer, "if this were a painting, I'd call it the futility of sneaking around. No offense, but we sounded like a herd of elephants coming in here." "More like the absurdity of possibly getting caught by your toxic employer," Dark countered, her bright pink hair contrasting sharply against the stark metal walls of the room. "Hurry, Mosley, okay?" Yeah, Mosley said, plugging the decryptor into the side of the computer. "Just some light hacking and general mayhem first." "Can you get to the classified documents?" I asked him. He pressed a bunch of buttons in quick succession. "Yup." I crossed over to peer over his shoulder. My thoughts raced, consumed with the implications the documents held for Nira and for me. "What did you find?" Dark inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something troubling," he replied and pointed to the screen. "A lot of somethings. Notice the dates? Because I sure do." One by one, the files on the computer decrypted. Hundreds of them, all marked highly classified. What else were they involved in that we didn't even know about? I tried to get some idea what they were involved in from the file names, but they were mostly dates. Many of them were centered around the time when Xenox made first contact with the humans, when my dad and brother were killed, when the embassy was attacked, and the explosion took Bex from me and nearly took me too. I wished I had time to sift through everything. I would, though. And soon. My determination to expose Earth Space Fleet's corruption grew stronger with each file decrypted. These people who claimed to be allies had been hiding things for too fucking long. The doorknob with the chair wedged underneath it began to rattle. The three of us froze. The stale air in the room hovered in my lungs. On the computer screen, the decryption progress bar wasn't even halfway through yet. Just as suddenly as the rattling started, it stopped. "They'll be coming back shortly, no doubt," I muttered. "Anything you can do to speed things up?" Dark whispered. "Other than pull up my email and prepare to send all of this to news organizations?" Mosley read carefully from the screen. "Afraid not." I scanned the walls filled with wildly inaccurate three-dimensional maps of Clio 3 I desperately wanted to steal so I could salivate over them, but I didn't. Why come in here at all? There are no fuses or generators in here, are there? They're probably worried about security and anyone coming in doing exactly what we're doing. Either that, or they need to use this computer for more nefarious purposes. Mosley nodded to the door as he typed quickly. "Whoever that was is sure to bring friends." The progress bar was nearly at 50%. "Didn't Nira tell Pete to send this from her email?" Dark asked, squinting at the screen. "Did she? I must have not heard that part." Mosley shrugged, but I guessed his intentions without him having to say any more. He was trying to protect her, like we all were. Dark huffed as she peered closer over his shoulder. "Comic Sans font? Really, Mosley?" "You want someone to open your email?" he said. "You pissed them off right at the start. Especially news organizations. They hate that shit." "How do you know?" Dark asked with narrowed eyes. "I'm a man of many talents. Pissing people off is a specialty of mine," he said while cracking his knuckles. "We want them to publish this, not piss them off," I told him gruffly. Look, I get it. But do you know how many emails news organizations get in a single day? You need to stand out. You need Comic Sans, my friend. I hissed underneath my breath. And if they're so pissed off that they delete the email without reading it, then you can delete him, Dark said to me with a grin while patting Mosley's shoulder. Tempting. You better be right. He lifted his hands and leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual. I'm always right. If we get caught, what do you think will happen to us? Dark blew a chunk of pink hair from her cheek. Murder? Or torture? Or will they just call us all traitors to the universe and lock us up forever? Mosley shrugged. Who knows? Who cares? Dark rolled her eyes. I do, obviously. I settled my hand on my machete handle strapped to my side with a black Space Fleet handkerchief. Let them try anything. Mosley nodded. Agreed. I don't plan on letting them get away with this. We'll see who tortures who in the long run. Dark offered him her fist, which he bumped with his own. Their easy platonic relationship reminded me of Axel and me, and Michael and me. Perfectly in sync with one another and natural. Maybe it hadn't started out that way, but it had evolved into it. I wished Axel were here. I wished Pete were with Michael. 3/4 of the way done, Mosley announced, his finger still tapping. As soon as he said it, a loud boom battered against the door. The three of us jumped, then leveled our weapons. The door suddenly swung open and crashed the chair against the wall. A woman with blonde hair pulled tightly into a bun stood framed in the doorway, her eyes like chips of ice. I recognized her from the bungalow. She'd been an unexpected morning visitor, and Nira had hidden me from her in the closet. Lieutenant Avery, Dark breathed. Found you, she said with a slight smirk. Don't look so scared. You all look like you've seen a ghost. More like a nightmare, Dark replied. You're projecting, Avery, Mosley told her, cracking the knuckles of his free hand against his thigh. You're the one who looks scared. Avery shot him a glare. For a moment, no one moved, locked in a silent battle of wills. Time to speed this whole process along. We're about to expose Earth Space Fleet's lies and deceit, I announced. If you try to stop us, you will fail. Avery laughed, a sinister sound that dragged across my scales. Oh, really? Two men stepped to her sides in the doorway, both armed to the teeth. Well, Avery said, nodding. Good luck with that.
Chapter 13. Nira. From inside the room, loud snores drifted out. Rain had been right. It wasn't a trap. At least, this part of the bunker. I allowed myself a sliver of relief and crept blindly toward the other side of the room. The air was thick with sweat and ass. Surely this was the male barracks, if my nose was anything to go by. Vague shapes floated in the darkness, side-lit from a few officers' solar-powered watches strapped to their wrists. That was my only source of light. And when one of them twitched or moved to scratch, I froze, my heart sinking into the ground. For some reason, this reminded me of wading through a vat of hibernating zombies. No idea where that thought came from, but I'd prefer no more like it, thank you very much. Ahead, I spotted the door, and I nearly peed in relief. On tiptoe, I slipped through it and quietly closed it behind me. Now, instead of a vat, I stood inside a well of emptiness. Conserve your flashlight battery for when you need it, and so you're not spotted. I'll guide you. Feel your way to the right. Rain instructed in my ear, her voice steady and calm. Slowly, in case you need to duck in somewhere for cover. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and followed along the wall. My breath came in shallow gasps, adrenaline pumping through my veins and coating my tongue with a bitter taste. "Remember to breathe, Nira," Rain reminded me gently. "I haven't heard you breathe in a while."
"Hush,"
I managed, forcing air into my lungs.
"Just help me find them."
"We'll make sure that happens," she reassured me.
"Tell Max and the others I'm okay,"
I said, my voice barely audible. "Will do." A pause. "They seem a little busy at the moment."
"With what?"
"Well, they're not exactly in a position to answer my questions." "Yes, understood. Dark just told me to fuck myself right off a cliff."
"So, it's going well then?"
"It would seem that way, yes," Rain said. "They're resourceful. They'll find their way back to you."
What was happening to them? The question haunted me even as I pushed it aside to focus on the task at hand.
"Turn left here," Rain instructed. "Pete's just ahead through the door with the square window in it."
"Alone?"
"Yes, for now. No heat sources detected," Rain whispered, her tone laced with anticipation. "But be prepared for anything."
I reached the door that separated me from Pete and forced a breath before I pushed my way in. Sweat pooled in my palms, making it difficult to maintain a firm grip on my flashlight. Tension built in my chest, the nagging sense of vulnerability that came from being separated from Max. I hated being away from him almost as much as I loved him. I closed the door gently behind me and fiddled with my flashlight to turn it on. "Pete?" My voice came out as a choppy whisper. No answer.
"Nira!" Rain suddenly warned, urgency sharpening her tone. "There's an officer coming your way, fast. Hide behind those crates to your left."
My pulse spiked as I quickly ducked behind the stack of metal containers, pressing my back against their cold surface. I held my breath, praying that the guard wouldn't come in here. But the door I'd just come through squeaked open, because of course it fucking did. The officer had followed me inside. A flashlight swept over the crates I crouched behind, and then swiveled in the other direction as his clipped footsteps traversed the room.
"Stay still," Rain whispered. "He's almost past you. Wait, he's slowing. Nira, don't move." Wasn't planning on it. Dread clawed at my insides, threatening to consume me. Who was in here with me? Was it Mike? Could he sense me somehow? Smell the ink from our divorce papers that I'd printed out 10 years ago for the sole purpose of rolling around on them? Or had he put trackers on his daggers I'd stolen yet again from him when he attacked me before my wedding? What would he do if he saw me here after he'd just about killed me? My lungs burned with the need to take a breath, but I didn't dare make even the slightest sound. My ears roared with the sound of approaching footsteps and my own stuttering heartbeat. Something scraped off the crate I'd hid behind, like some kind of item the officer had grabbed. Then the footsteps retreated. The door squeaked open and closed, and I was alone in here with Pete once again. "Okay," Rain breathed. "The coast is clear. You can move now." I exhaled slowly, forcing my stiff limbs into motion as I stood. The taste of panic lingered on my tongue, but I swallowed it down, forcing myself to focus on getting us all out of this shithole. My hands trembling slightly, I turned on my flashlight and aimed it around the brig. The shadows seemed to dance and flicker, playing nasty tricks on my fear of the dark. Then I spotted him. Pete, bound to a chair and gagged in the center of a glass cage. Rivulets of matted blood stained his bleached hair, and his once vibrant blue eyes were now dull and unfocused. At the state of him, white-hot rage boiled up inside me, but I shoved it down as I crossed toward the control panel that would lift the cage. Except the bunker had no power. "Rain!" I heaved a breath, my voice coming out too shallow. Any chance you can direct a little bit of power to the brig control panel so I can free Pete? Let me see what I can do. A pause while a few lights blinked to life on the panel. Try it now. I hit the correct button and waited for what seemed like forever for the cage to lift upward. It worked. Thanks. My whole body jolted at the realization I'd just thanked my child's murderer. But I squashed those roiling emotions down. She was helping me. More importantly, she was helping Pete. For now, that was what mattered. I rushed toward him. A long, long pause later, Rain said softly, "You're welcome, Nira." "Hey, Pete," I whispered, trying to sound as reassuring as possible, even though my voice shook at seeing him like this. "I'm here to get you out of this mess." His eyes widened in recognition, and he tried to speak through the gag, but all that came out was an unintelligible mumble. Carefully, so I wouldn't brush the ugly cuts on his face, I removed the gag from his mouth. He breathed in deeply, relief flooding his face. "Guess what?" "What?" I bent to untie him. "I planted the scale and got the entire torture scene on film," he rasped. "Torture?" My insides wilted. Tears scorched the back of my throat. "Even better is that I didn't tell them shit." I couldn't find my voice. And even if I could, there were no words to convey to him how sorry I was about sending him in here. So I just hauled him to his feet and hugged him. Unsteady as he was, he hugged me right back. "Thank you, Nira. I knew you'd come for me." Still at a loss for words, I wiped the tears from my face and then guided him toward the door. He winced as he put weight on his bloody leg, but he didn't complain. "I'm so sorry, Pete." I managed to get out. He leaned on me for support. "I'm not. You know what I told them while they were peeling off my fingernails? Oh, my Lord, I would forever be making this up to him. I told them, I don't sweat under pressure. I make pressure sweat. God, I'm good at this. This video will be my audition tape for the movies. Universal Hollywood, here I come." I stopped in front of the door, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps, while basically carrying him. "That's awesome, Pete, but we still need to get you out of here. Do you think you can make it?" "I can make it anywhere." He sounded like he was either about to pass out or was still imagining Universal Hollywood. "All clear, Rain?" "All clear," she confirmed. "The others are straight down the hall. Third door to your left. They may be a tad jumpy, so I would suggest you knock first." I opened the door, my heartbeat rioting with each step out of the brig, aware that danger lurked around every corner. Half dragging, half carrying Pete straight ahead, we finally made it to the third door on my left. I knocked lightly, and it immediately opened to a pair of eyes I'd never been so relieved to see. "Max," I said, practically falling through the door with Pete into his arms. He caught us both and sighed heavily into my hair. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Pete isn't." "I've got a black belt in justice and a PhD in kicking butt," Pete muttered, and then promptly passed out. Max moved his hulking body out of the way to take Pete from me, and that's when I saw the state of the room. 3 officers lay passed out on the floor, while Dark relieved them all of their weapons. One I recognized as Lieutenant Avery, and not just because of her tight blonde bun. She was ogling my chest. Always my chest, even though right now my girls were good and covered. Noticing she was starting to come to, Dark knelt over and delivered a swift punch to her face.
"Guess how long I've wanted to do that?"
she asked, shaking out her fist. "Since she first scowled at you?" I guessed. Mosley stood and waved the decryptor in the air.
Everything's been decrypted and emailed.
And copies? I asked.
Oh, yeah,
Mosley assured me. Captain, I hate to interrupt, Rain said in my ear, interrupting anyway, but several officers are returning to the bunker from their e-cig break. You'll need to find another way out.
Where?
Max demanded into his mic, carrying Pete like a baby. Rain's mic crackled in response. There's a secret exit not far from your location. Follow my directions, but you'll have to be quick. Together, we exited the room and turned and twisted through the dark passages, each step bringing us closer to freedom. My heart raced with every hushed footstep, adrenaline coursing through my veins like quicksilver. Turn right here, Rain instructed. We rounded the next corner to find a narrow passage concealed behind a row of crates and a ladder beyond. Officer incoming from the left, Rain hissed. Somehow juggling Pete, Max grabbed my arm and pulled me back behind the crates. Dark and Mosley quickly joined us. My heart galloped into my throat as faint footsteps approached our hiding spot. The seconds dragged on like hours, each one a tense struggle as we waited in silence. Clear, Rain finally whispered. I climbed up the ladder to first make sure the coast was clear, and pushed the trapdoor open to reveal a starlit night with a calming sea breeze. This trapdoor led to the other side of the jungle, closer to the beach house. The moon cast a silvery glow over the serene beach, revealing the shadows of our small group huddled together as we crept toward safety. Even though Max carried Pete gently, he groaned. It's okay, Pete. We're almost there. I reached out for his hand, but pulled away when my fingers slicked blood. I didn't want to hurt him any more than he was. Somehow, he cracked a grin.
I've got 99 problems, and solving them all involves explosions.
Maybe it was Pete. Maybe it was the relief of finally having won a battle over Earth's space fleet. But we all erupted into quiet laughter.
Chapter 14. Mosley. Email date 7/31/2640. To Comic News Anchor at youdecide.com. God at god.com. Intergalactic Reporter at nyt.com. Space Oddity News at fax.com. News from Outer Space at times.com. Warp 9 News at fox.com. Alien Sighting News at cbnnbc.com. Comic Chronicles at herald.com. Nebula Observer at post.com. From E. Mosley at earthspacefleet.com. Subject, you'll want to read this. Contains 1,348 attachments. Earth Space Fleet is shit. Here's proof lifted from their own computers. A lot more attached. I think you'll find the email below particularly interesting. No threat existed with Fade, so they made one up to exploit it first. Notice the super subtle mention of the Xenox, like they have anything to do with it. Rolling eyes emoji.
Dear Captain Michael Early, I hope this letter finds you in good health. I'm writing to you today under the strictest confidence and with the highest level of security clearance. The purpose of this communication is to bring to your attention a matter of paramount importance to our planet's security and safety. Our intelligence network has recently uncovered a grave threat posed by the Fade, Federation of Artificial Intelligence Drives, operating within Earth's borders. These androids, equipped with highly advanced capabilities that, if hacked, pose a clear and present danger to our planet's security infrastructure and humanity's safety. In response to this imminent threat, Earth's Space Fleet has initiated Operation Quantum Override, a highly classified and covert mission designed to neutralize the Fade entities by utilizing cutting-edge cyber warfare techniques. Our analysts have identified a unique vulnerability in the androids' central processing units, CPUs, that, if exploited first, could allow us to gain control and effectively disable their autonomous functions. Our team of elite cyber warfare specialists working in collaboration with experts from Earth's top technology research institutions, has developed a sophisticated malware program codenamed Cerberus. This program is specifically tailored to infiltrate the AI entity's neural networks and execute a strategic override, granting us control over their operational systems, or recontrol should these weaknesses be exploited by our universal enemies or even our allies such as the Loucks. Upon gaining control of the Fade, we will test our and their abilities accordingly to deduce how far we can push them past their normal, docile programming. The test will include urging them to dispatch a life so that information can be gathered for such times when their programming is overridden by outside forces. This way, greater protections can be sought by our team to ensure the Fade aren't used against Earth and humanity. The success of Operation Quantum Override is contingent upon the utmost secrecy and precision. The enclosed detailed operational plan, access codes, and encryption keys are to be known only to you and a select group of trusted operatives. Any unauthorized disclosure of this information could compromise the mission, jeopardize the security of our planet, and will result in charges of treason and immediate dismissal from Earth's space fleet. I trust that you will handle this matter with the utmost discretion and ensure that all personnel involved in the operation are fully briefed on the sensitivity of the mission. Time is of the essence, and we must act swiftly to safeguard our beloved planet from the impending threat posed by the vulnerabilities of the Fade. Your unwavering dedication to the defense of our great Earth is deeply appreciated. Together we shall overcome this challenge and emerge victorious in the face of adversity. Godspeed. Sincerely, Earth Space Fleet HQ. Mosley, former ESF engineer, out. Chapter 15. Max. We waited. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Waiting for someone to read Mosley's email and blast it across the universe, even though it had only been last night when he sent it, or for someone to find the bugged scale Pete had planted to see if they'd sell it. I wanted to pore over Earth Space Fleet's highly classified documents myself, but instead, I was stuck on a reality TV show. Still, not on my honeymoon with the most stunning, perfect bride. Not anywhere but here, while much more pressing matters demanded my attention. No, I was sitting on the platform in my hover chair, watching Pete lick one of the lenses on a camera drone. Fucks my life. Fucks it with a rusty spoon. At least Pete was upright and not muttering his one-liners that he thought belonged in action movies. He wore his aviators and a loose-fitting shirt to cover the bruises his makeup team couldn't hide, and if you paid attention, he still walked with a limp. But he appeared to be back to the normal camera-licking Pete we all loved and wanted to strangle. Can I just kill him? Next to me, Michael had his green arms crossed over his chest tightly, as though restraining himself from doing just that. I know where to hide the body. I'll help, I muttered. Then much, much louder I added, "Stop it right now, Pete, or you'll be wearing your tongue as a scarf." He stopped to stare at me like I was the crazy one here. "It's called helping to fill 44 minutes of airtime," he hissed. But he did stop, thank the goddess. Really, I was glad the deranged man was okay, though. "Please tell me you bought the camera dinner first, at least," one-eyed June on the other side of the platform asked. "He has a kink for cameras, I get it," Judge on my other side said. "I used to be into axleism." Rico slowly turned to face him, pushing his glasses up his nose. "A sexual attraction to armpits?" Oh my fucking goddess. And I had to sit next to Judge? "Start the show, Pete," I gritted out. "Just saying," Michael muttered. "Murder is a viable solution to a number of problems." Don't tempt me. I was considering a little light murder, though, in the form of Mosley. If his Comic Sans email didn't force news stations to open it, then what? We'd be back to square zero, To ease my growing irritation, I looked to Nira on the other side of the platform, my new bride. I'd been staring pretty much non-stop since she'd climbed the steps, looking so radiant that she glowed. She wore a long green dress today, with the slightest silver shimmer, but it was her smile that lit her from within, so big and carefree and happy. The sight of it riled my pulses and locked a promise within my hearts. I would spend an eternity to ensure her smile stayed there. Because if there was anything Nira deserved, it was happiness. There was no greater honor than just witnessing it, let alone offering it. She fidgeted with her brand new wedding ring, twisting it with her thumb this way and that, so the sunset sky danced and sparkled inside the rare metals and crystals. Her other hand rested on her belly protectively, still flat, but that would soon change. Xenox's gestation was short, and the thought of her with a swollen stomach, growing our baby, charged my blood into a stampede. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, while my Kaksui slithered out uninvited to subtly stroke my balls and tease my already hard cock. As if sensing the direction of my thoughts, Nira looked up from the light show in her ring, and her smile brightened impossibly more when she caught me staring. But then her eyes widened toward Pete, at something he was saying.
Is the last episode. I know our time is so short.
Pete held his arms out to his sides.
This might come as a shock to you all, but this show has been slightly derailed a time or two. We were supposed to rendezvous with new contestants in the luxury cruise ship, but we couldn't because of the detour to Xenox.
He looked at me and put his hands up defensively.
Which was lovely, and I'm not complaining in the slightest, but we were also supposed to vote several contestants off, but we couldn't because of our little, tiny crash landing. You know how it is! It's madness, I tell you, and that's the joy of reality TV!
I sat up straighter, willing my Kaksui back into their homes to keep from distracting me. Could this really be it? The last episode? Finally? The end of this experience I never signed up for, never wanted to do again, but somehow led me to find the perfect wife and queen anyhow?
So, here's what we're going to do.
Pete clapped his hands together and rubbed them dramatically.
We find out that the voting situation is like, send 2 of you home right away, have some super sexy fun, and then find out who our winners are with real, live voting throughout this final episode. And your lovely host, who, by the way, has made this network billions, is going to hold your hands the entire time.
The slightest bite in his tone made me think that Umo and the network wanted a fresh start for Season 2, with a new host and new contestants who could all be easily manipulated and take orders. In other words, not us. "If you hold my hand," a female crew member whispered solemnly from nearby, "then I'll hold your dick, Pete." Then she made the sign of the cross, kissed her fingertips, and raised them to the sky. Michael groaned. "The cult of Pete is rather demented," I agreed. I was going to say culty and devoted. I side-eyed him. "You're saying you want your own cult? It never hurt anyone to be loved." He leaned over and propped his elbows on his knees, pressing his fingertips together as he squinted at the view screen rising up from the platform. "Until it does. Painfully. Endlessly." Coming from him, that truth carved into my chest even deeper. I felt for the Killian. If I'd begun to fall for someone who'd then betrayed me and shot me with poison bullets, dropping me at death's front door, my heart would still be healing too. Probably for a very long time. "I'm sorry, Michael. For what it's worth, I really am." He shrugged and glanced back at me over his shoulder. "This hasn't been a complete waste of time." No, I was sure it hadn't, because whether he knew it or not, he'd gained a brother. So had I. and no one was more surprised by that than me. Finally, the numbers next to our names on the view screen stopped shuffling and instantly reordered themselves from first place down for both males and females. First place for me, which meant absolutely nothing, and Michael was fairly close behind. My gaze automatically skipped to the female side and found Nira in a tight second behind June.
Now don't you fret if you're not where you want to be, or if your favorite contestant isn't doing as well as they should. Contestants' places could easily change by the end of this episode. The number to call is at the bottom of your view screens, so make those calls, people!
Can you imagine, Rico began, if the universe showed the same excitement for doing actual good rather than for a reality TV show? Sal mock gasped. We do not do that here, ever. If you don't like it so much, why did you sign up? Judge asked Rico. A deep, deep sigh left Rico's lungs. It was my mother's idea. Michael dropped his head back to stare at the sky. Same. Mother's, man. I remembered his mom on the view screen during one of the early episodes where she very publicly admonished him for not finding a mate yet while sewing a little baby hat with holes for Killian horns. Must be a lot of pressure, I muttered to him. She means well, I suppose, and I'm thankful I still have her. I nodded, my heart splintering. I didn't talk about my mom much, but she died soon after my dad's murder. She withered away from heartbreak, and there was nothing I could do but helplessly watch it unfold. The kind of love they shared was eternal, much like Nira's and mine.
I hear a lot of buzzing over here,
Pete hissed at us.
Like pesky, gossipy flies who are about to meet their maker if they don't shut up. Live show here, people.
At that threat, Michael's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. Speaking of flies, yours is down.
Fuck!
Pete quickly turned and yanked his zipper back up to a chorus of snickers. Poor Pete. I would have told him before we went live, but after him waxing poetic about his boners and about giving them enough room in his pants a few episodes ago, I generally avoided looking at anything in that general vicinity. When he faced the camera drones again, Pete easily slid back into his smooth, cavalier host role.
All good, baby. All good. Now, time to get these contestants up on their toes in a last-ditch effort to win the audience's hearts to propel them into first place. All they have to do is...
He broke off too suddenly, the tan color on his face draining too quickly to be anything close to natural. He stared at the jungle wall behind us with wide, unblinking eyes, completely frozen in place. Pete? Nira and I whispered at the same time. The crew on the sand below the platform looked very much the way he did, with stark terror written all over their faces. A cold prickle dashed up the back of my neck, and slowly, painfully slowly, I turned around in my seat. A huge black panther was creeping out from the jungle wall on silent, stealthy feet. Even the thick foliage hardly swayed as its lithe hindquarters and tail emerged from the jungle. Its yellow eyes stuck straight ahead on a direct course toward Pete, and in its mouth dangled a bloody, booted stump of a human foot. The scream. The male scream we'd heard from the jungle a few episodes back. Was this what had happened? Pete, Michael said, barely a whisper. Don't move. Don't breathe. Don't make eye contact. I've got you. Of course he did. Despite their constant brotherly bickering, the two adored each other. To Pete's credit, he didn't do anything but stand there. To everyone else's credit, they didn't move a muscle either. We all watched in complete silence as the gorgeous apex predator crossed the platform. I couldn't help but admire its sleek black coat, soundless movements, and fierce-looking teeth gripping the human foot in its mouth. It already had a snack. It didn't need Pete too. I hoped. Subtly, not even a movement at all, Michael reached for the machete he'd stashed underneath his hover chair for the obvious just-in-case scenario that by now all of us expected. I had mine too, but I prayed to the goddess we wouldn't have to use a machete on such a magnificent creature. As it passed by us, I glimpsed Nira staring at it in wonder, while both her arms were crossed protectively over our baby. Ignoring Pete altogether, the panther crouched at the edge of the platform and then leaped off into the sand below. Judging by the crew's stares, it loped off toward the sea. As soon as it was gone, a collective relieved breath stormed from everyone's lungs. June and Nackett started sobbing. A shaky, croaking sound came from Pete, and he took a single step and then crumbled to the platform in a dead faint. In an instant, Michael was there to catch him. I surged toward Nira to make sure she was all right. When she saw me coming, she stood shakily and leaned in to whisper, "The boot in its mouth was Earth's space fleet." It was. I'd noted the same stitching as Nira's combat boots. Other than feet, I wondered if the panther was the reason there weren't any birds here. "Major," she gripped my arms tightly. "I'm worried about Major. I didn't realize there were bigger cats here, and he does not follow orders to stay put." "Then we'll go find him," I assured her. The live show was fuxed anyway after that scare. But when we started for the stairs, we found Dark already there, her short pink hair fluttering around her face. "I'm on it, Captain. I'll report back once I know he's secure." Nira pulled her pilot in for a hug. "How did you know that's what I was going to ask you?" "I was already on Captain Watch, and I've been watching you for a good long time. Your worries are my worries." Dark looked up at me over Nira's bare shoulder. "You're on Captain Watch until I get back, Your Highness." I nodded once, grateful for her unwavering dedication to Nira. Always. As Dark turned and ran in the direction of their ship, Nira scoffed. "Captain Watch. I've never been so thankful for a babysitter in my life." With the list of things that can kill us on this planet steadily growing, the more Captain Watchers, the better, I said, cupping her beautiful face in my hands. "I'm kicking myself for not having pretty kitties on my murder bingo card." I nodded and looked over my shoulder at the thick foliage. We should have guessed that before we traipsed back and forth through the jungle. "I think we met our fair share of dangers in the jungle. Remember the snack hole you fell in? Or the falling flowers that made us pass out, then wake up in an escape room?" Shaking her head, she heaved a breath. "Good times." I laughed because she sounded dead serious, and then wrapped her up in my arms. The best. She snuggled more firmly against me, her cheek pressed to one of my hearts. "This has been quite the roller coaster, huh?" "It's never a dull moment with you, my beautiful star." Sure, there were things I would change, but this moment right here, with my bride, made it all worth it.
Chapter 16. Nira. Dark came back shortly with 2 thumbs up about Major's safety, and then an epic bombshell. "Someone at Earth's Space Fleet put it out there about the Xenox scale they found," she said excitedly. "Rain said all we need is a time and place to meet them." I looked to Max, too stunned to speak for a second. Our shoddy plan had actually worked? Could this really be happening?
Any idea who reached out to sell it?
Max demanded, his no-nonsense growl edging his words with sharp points. "Rain and Mosley couldn't tell," Dark said. "They were speaking tech, so I'm afraid I can't give you the reasons why they couldn't." "If we knew who it was," I began nodding slowly, "we would better know how to proceed, who to send to make the deal, and where." "It's not like we can really go anywhere, though, right?" Dark asked. "We're kind of stuck here." An idea struck with the force of a hammer. "We make the trade here on Cleo 3. Dark scrunched her cute little button nose. Isn't that a little too obvious? A little too over-eager? What if they catch on that it's all a big hoax? The worst that could happen is they don't show up to make the deal, right? We can just say that one of our associates happens to be in the neighborhood. It could happen. Shrugging, I looked to Max to see what he thought about it, but he was too busy gouging out the planet with the force of his glare. We'll get the scale back, Max. I promise.
It's not even the scale. It's the meaning of what they're doing. There is no bottom with them, with any of them, he ground out. I knew this, of course, after everything they've done.
He flicked his gaze up to me, tortured and haunted and angry, a replica of everything I felt too.
Everything they've taken, and have almost taken.
I nodded, right there with him, and took his hand in mine. Who do we send to meet them?
Not Pete,
Max and Dark said in unison, and it was the perfect moment to lighten the mood some. We each exhaled relieved chuckles. No, Pete has done more than enough. I turned to check to see if our host was still lying in Michael's arms after fainting, but no, he was upright and talking again. Michael was rolling his eyes at whatever he was saying, so everything looked normal once again. Someone else they don't know. Someone we can trust. I searched the stage, and my gaze kept circling back to one individual. Someone like June.
June.
It was a hiss from Max more than a question. I listed all of her assets on my fingers. She's smart, she's flirtatious, she's cool under pressure, she's a good actress, and she hasn't tried to kill us. Yet. Max gestured to the stage.
She's also currently in first place on this show. You don't think they'll recognize her?
We'll give her a light makeover just in case. After all, lots of aliens had one eye like June. You think she'll go for it? Dark asked skeptically. If we ensure her first place, I bet she will. At Dark's gasp, I added, Look, this show's been nice and all, but I want to go on a honeymoon with my husband and let him impregnate me again. Pronto. Max hauled me into his side and growled, so deeply and possessively that it rumbled into me and licked flames across my skin. Dark's eyes widened at Max. Then she pursed her lips on a smile at me. And how are you going to promise her first place? It's not up to you, and everyone loves you. I snorted. No, they really don't. But I'll think of something. I'll be boring. I'll keep my mouth shut, or I'll go full Karen. Something. Max and Dark shook their heads like they didn't believe I could do such a thing. But I'd prove them wrong. I just didn't know how yet. 10 minutes later, we had yet another shoddy plan. But it was a plan all the same. We were getting really good at those. June had agreed to be our liaison at the crew's beach house, so long as I hand-delivered her the first-place prize and the 1,000,000 credits that came with it. I didn't care about that part. All I cared about was finding some kind of justice, and so far I had nothing. Dark relayed all the info to Rain on my ship, and the official trade of the Xenox scale for black market money would happen in exactly 2.5 hours. We had time. The live airing of the last episode had been delayed to tomorrow for safety precautions, Umo's words, which meant he puffed on his cigar while he and the crew patrol for the Panther with camera drones.
In case a mauling happens, it better be on film, damn it!
His words, yet again. I wanted as few people to know about this crazy idea as possible, so I did June's makeup myself, and purposefully didn't let her look in a mirror afterward. Look, we couldn't all be as talented as Oreo and Smitha, and yes, I apologized, inside my head, to June for making her look like an angry hooker on a cherry snow cone bender. I also did some light theft of a camera drone so we could watch June's progress toward the crew beach house, while Max, Mosley, Dark, and I huddled in the backyard behind a cluster of potted tropical plants, in case things went south and for the obligatory, "Ha-ha, caught you" video. The crew beach house had a hot tub on the front porch, and that was where the meeting would take place. The porch, not the hot tub. Everyone else was out searching for the Black Panther. June sashayed her way toward the house. The camera drone hovered far above, but we could kind of make out someone waiting for her, though. I couldn't tell who yet. June was wired up with Mike, so we'd find out soon enough. My heart shuddered with her every step. I hated sending others in to do my dirty work since it had gone so poorly last time, but here I was, doing it yet again. Sensing my unease, Max rubbed my lower back, evaporating some of my tension. As June reached the porch, I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what came next.
Paraguay?
A male voice said. Deep, familiar, one that chased a shiver up my shoulders. It was none other than Mike, the man who once shared a life with me, whose heart held so many secrets. My ex-husband, now my enemy, now a symbol of the corruption we were fighting against. Wow, he was stupid. Never mind what that said about me for marrying him, but wow. How the fuck did we get so lucky? Unless this was a trap. This was probably a trap. Cold sweat trickled down my spine. Mosley looked at me with wide eyes. Dark-mouthed. Fuck me. Max rubbed my back harder, pretty much keeping me upright at this point. Paraguay, yes, that's me. And you are? June's voice sounded cool and detached as she climbed up the porch steps.
Not important,
Mike said smoothly, his voice dripping with insincere charm.
What a pleasure it is to meet you.
I just about gagged, but I was too busy studying every twitch of Mike's face, every glint of suspicion in his hazel eyes. Was he onto us? Or was that just his face now? He was minus his uniform today, likely meant to put distance between him and Space Fleet given the illegality of his current situation, and was dressed in plain, boring shorts and a V-neck. Likewise, June agreed, her one eye narrowing slightly. Well, not important. Can I see it? He feigned surprise, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers clenched ever so slightly.
So eager.
We both have places to be, I'm sure, especially since this meeting was not originally on my agenda. So let's cut through the bullshit and get to it, shall we? Her cherry snow-cone mouth drew up into a macabre smile. And damn did I want to give her a standing ovation right now.
If you insist.
Mike brought something from his pocket. I tensed. So did everyone else with me. But all he handed her was something tiny. Mosley did his best to zoom in on it with the drone controls on his computer. It's real? She asked, inspecting it closely.
As real as it can get, he affirmed. How much are these going for nowadays?
2 million credits minimum, June said without any hesitation. Something dark gleamed within Mike's eyes.
Is that all?
I called bullshit right then and there. He hadn't been expecting that high of a number. I knew him too damn well. June looked up from the scale in her palm shrewdly, and as I watched her unflinching gaze meet his, I knew this was the beginning of the end, not just for Mike and his twisted agenda, but for the entire corrupt organization known as Earth Space Fleet that had caused us so much pain and suffering. I'll give you 5 million credits, June said with all the confidence in the galaxy. Mike nodded slowly.
No strings, no digital trail.
June's voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. Does this look like amateur hour to you? Mike grinned.
No, it does not.
June turned away from him and gave him a dismissive wave as she started down the porch steps. You have my email. Send me your bank info and you'll have your credits within 2 hours.
I have your word,
he called after her. You have my email, In my world, that's better than my word, she said without looking back. That was probably one of the most badass encounters I'd ever witnessed. I want to be June when I grow up, I whispered.
That's what I was going to say,
Dark agreed.
And we got it all on film,
Mosley said with a broad grin, folding his holographic computer into his pocket. Max pressed a kiss to my temple and sighed his relief. We'll wait for him to send that email, I said.
And I'll forward everything once again to the news stations and the Universal Police,
Mosley added.
And yes, Max, in Comic Sans, it'll work. Trust me.
I wound myself into Max's arms. While we waited for justice, we had a reality show to lose, and then an entire future to look forward to. I could hardly wait.
Chapter 17. Max. 11 months later. Our shuttle's engines whirred slowly, their gentle drone mixing with the lapping waves and the rustle of wind through the jungle outside. Cleo 3 had dramatically changed since we'd last been here. Now it was a sight to behold, lush and vibrant, with jungles sprawling for miles in every direction. Vines twisted up both vacant, neglected beach houses, and giant ferns dotted the much smaller beaches and swayed gently in the ocean breeze. We had no reason to be here other than a quick stop on our way to Earth to visit Nira's parents and introduce them to their newborn grandchild. But we wanted to come back to where our love story really began, with sand and sunsets, danger and deceit, passion and tenderness. The platform where we'd filmed had been reclaimed by nature. Weeds grew through cracks in the floorboards, and bioluminescent mushrooms and moss covered much of the handrails. I took it all in from the shuttle's view screen, reliving memories from when we were on the show. The last I'd heard, Pete had made it to Universal Hollywood and was filming an action movie that was supposedly already creating a lot of buzz. More than anything, I hoped he was happy doing what he enjoyed and licking cameras everywhere. Nira had hired Oreo and Smitha to be her own personal style team, to which they'd immediately agreed. Now, though, they were off honeymooning, the two of them as happily married as Nira and me. Michael had headed back to his home planet, and after some sweet-talking from Nira to encourage our bromance, he'd agreed to come visit and meet our baby in a few months. It would be great to see him again. The rest of the cast and crew had all but vanished the day Nira and I got voted off the show. My God, look at how much it's changed, Nira murmured, not wanting to wake our baby in her arms. Her name was Nyx, and she was the most perfect little girl who'd ever been born, other than Roxanne and Lucy, of course. Her tiny fists were clenched tightly in sleep, her features mirroring both of her adoring parents. Nira's bottomless brown eyes shot through with jagged purple lightning bolts, a mix of silvery skin and scales, and a head full of wild, dark hair that refused to be tamed. Even at 6 months old, she was a stubborn fighter. Roxanne had fallen head over heels in love with her little half-sister. I had too, instantly. Every time I looked at both of my daughters, they left me breathless. I nuzzled Nyx's soft, warm head with my nose as I angled the shuttle toward the line of bungalows. They were still there, half hidden by the jungle's embrace. You think the sex toys are still in the closets? Nira asked with a light chuckle. I chuckled. Don't forget the machetes. Gah, the memories of this place are still so surreal. She shook her head. I both loved and hated it in equal measure. An unforgettable experience, to be sure. I touched our shuttle down lightly on the small expanse of beach so we could stretch our legs and look around briefly. There were stories of pirates and smugglers operating on the fringes of civilization, taking advantage of this planet's isolation, but right now, it appeared empty. Still, I wouldn't be leaving this shuttle without my father's sword. I sometimes missed the machete, but my sword was lighter and deadlier and definitely not the preferred choice of certain reality dating shows. We wouldn't find any signs of Earth's space fleet here. Ever. Shortly after we lost Alien Love Island, TV view screens all across the universe sprang to life, displaying a cascade of damning evidence against them. Whispers spread like wildfire as realization dawned, and then those whispers turned to shouts demanding accountability and punishment. Earth's space fleet disbanded into a puff of smoke. Some fled. Others were arrested. Captain Mike Early got 10 years in prison for just his role in trying to sell a Xenox scale on the black market. Nira had watched the video of him being led away in handcuffs at least 100 times. Was it enough? Would it ever be enough for what they put us both through? Part of the evidence that came out proved they were the ones responsible for poisoning the Xenox water supply, for assassinating my father and brother, for the embassy attack that killed Bex and me, and for the plot that nearly took Roxanne, all for the sake of taking our valuable planet. The non-existence of Earth's space fleet didn't change any of that, but nothing could. I'd come to accept that. As long as they weren't around to point unnecessary fingers at the Fade, at Rain, the Killians, or the Xenox, life for many of us could return to normal. Or as normal as possible anyway. Nira blew a kiss to her caterpillar in the jar on the console, and as we stepped out onto the shuttle's platform, I took a deep breath. The air was thick with moisture and smelled of sweet flowers and salty sea. Nira inhaled deeply too. Smells like Loserville. Loserville never smelled so good, I said, stealing a kiss. For June and Rico, the human male with glasses, this planet might smell a lot different. They were the winners of Alien Love Island after a tumultuous game of boxing and bingo, which was exactly what it sounded like. Nira and I didn't participate because she was pregnant and needed to give the victory to June, which led to our automatic loss. Even though Michael was a close second place behind me and could easily have been the winner of the show with June, he bowed out as well. Each of us had to pay a hefty sum to Umo, which I'd taken care of for all of us. We started toward the nearest bungalow, our bungalow. As we did, Nira turned to look over her shoulder at the pulsing beacon on the cliff top. As she did so, whether subconsciously or otherwise, she shielded Nyx with her body. I didn't tell her that Rain still lived here, and she didn't ask, but I was sure she knew. Rain and I still corresponded by email, sometimes daily, none of which included any of her usual bubble-popping to thwart hacking attempts. Not anymore. I forwarded these emails to Nira. They went unread. It was never a point of contention between us. Nira's feelings about Rain were complicated, and they had every right to be. If and when Nira was ready for forgiveness, I would support her. If not, I would still support her. Finally breaking through the foliage, we stood before the bungalow door. The snick of the doorknob releasing echoed around us as I pushed it open. Every footfall echoed off damp walls, making me feel like an intruder in a forgotten tomb.
Hello?
I called. No answer. Not that I expected one. The inside of the bungalow looked surprisingly well kept, with only a thin, undisturbed layer of dust on the floor and the bed. It feels like we're home, I said softly, pulling Nira close for a kiss that instantly ignited flames. She pulled away, her eyes alight, and grinned. I'll check the closets. She handed me Nyx, and I shut the door while she scampered off to the nearest closet. Ah, bummer! Empty! She announced. Gently, I shook out the satin bedspread with my free arm.
No machetes on the top shelf. Nope. Then I guess we'll have to make our own fun.
Laying the bedspread back down, I settled Nyx on top of it and smoothed her soft yellow tunic embroidered with intricate patterns, signifying peace and unity. She hadn't started rolling yet, and the bed was king-sized, so I wasn't worried about her safety. "Oh?" Nira asked. "What did you have in mind, Your Highness?" "I think you know, Your Highness." I backed her against a wall, a low growl rumbling from my chest as I pressed my body against hers. I leaned in to devour her lips with mine. We were already working on baby number 2, sometimes hours at a time. I would never get enough of my beautiful star. "Are the memories of this place driving you as crazy as they are me?" she asked between my hungry kisses. She murmured. I traced her bottom lip with my tongue and breathed her even farther inside myself. "For what?" "For bringing me back here." She gazed at me, a small smile playing on her lips as she reached up to stroke my face. "Other than escaping death all the time, I really enjoyed it." "Me too," I sighed, nuzzling my face against hers. "We can come back again whenever you want." Nodding, she turned to look at our daughter on the bed. "Do you think she knows we're here? Rain, I mean?" "She probably does know somehow. I'm not sure." I didn't press any to get to the root of her question. I simply let her sit with it at her own speed and depth. As if thankful for that, she leaned in to kiss my cheek, her lips soft against my scales, but she didn't say anything else, her thoughts whirring behind her dark eyes. We dressed leisurely, stealing more kisses and loving touches, and then we hovered over our daughter and did the same to her. When we finally left the bungalow, Nira once again stared out at the pulsing beacon, no longer shielding Nyx as she did so. "I hope she does know, and I hope she knows we might be back again someday." I nodded, pulling her closer with my arm around her shoulders. That almost sounded like a resolution, not one forged in forgiveness, but acceptance. Like her world was finally spinning in the right direction. As we walked back to the shuttle, the sunset slowly dissolved into night. Stars twinkled above like promises unbroken, leading us to a future filled with love and happiness for an alien Fade clone warrior king and his perfect human bride.
Chapter 18. Rain. Email date 7/14/2640 to sano@universe.com from Phantom born of curiosity and blazing saddles and ramen noodles lurking outside your door at IamTooPrettyToDie.com. Subject: hey.
Sorry for the late reply. I've been too busy putting both feet in shit. So, I have a little problem. Our 2 favorites are where they need to be, but that evidence I planted, it was stolen by some naked blue chick with mirror eyes before Max woke up. I am so fucked. Soon I will be no more. Nothing but a blush and a dirty memory from my favorite pink-haired pilot, and a rage-filled pain in my king's ass. Will you be coming to my funeral? Axel.
Email date 6/1/2640 to Phantom born of curiosity and blazing saddles and ramen noodles lurking outside your door at IamTooPrettyToDie.com. From Sano@universe.com. Subject: hey. Hi, Axel. Oh, dear. I may have signed up my favorite space captain for the same Do you think we can come up with a way for them to hitch a ride there together? up. Email date 6/1/2640 to Phantom born of curiosity and blazing saddles and ramen noodles lurking outside your door at iamtooprettytodie.com. From sano@universe.com. Subject: Hey. Hi, Axel. You're welcome. I enjoy hearing from you too much to mind your thousands of thank yous. Bubbles, i.e., destroy hacking attempts in my spare time. I'll have to look into this. Email date 6/1/2640 to sano@universe.com. From Phantom born of curiosity and blazing saddles and ramen noodles lurking outside your door at iamtooprettytodie.com. Subject: Hey.
Hi, Rain. I just wanted to once again tell you thank you for everything you've done for me, Max, and the entire species of Xenox. I know I've thanked you already at least 1,000 times, and I can't promise I'm done yet. I hope you don't mind. When you're not saving species and reading never-ending thank yous from me, what else do you do? I hope you don't mind my nosiness either. What do? You're probably not asking. I do really stupid things, like sign my king up for season 1 of a reality dating show called Alien Love Island, so he can finally find a wife and be less Max. R.I.P. to me when he finds out. Or if he finds out. Maybe with a little elbow grease he won't. Maybe I'll plant some evidence or something and hide my digital trail to make it look like it wasn't me and then plead stupid. Thoughts? An extra shovel to dig my own grave with? Axel.
The end. You have been listening to Chosen by the Alien King, Alien Love Island Season 1, Book 5, a sci-fi alien warrior romance by Lindsey R. Loucks. Copyright 2024 held by Lindsey R. Loucks. Narrated by Jenna Rose and BJ Hunter. Produced and directed by CTR Audio.